BBOR Black Box Online Radio, coming to you from West Virginia. BlackBoxNid88 on Instagram for the bonus podcast. And welcome to BBOR, the home of true crime talk radio and your premier destination for unsolved mysteries, criminal psychology, and exploring the dark side of cyberspace. My name is Ned DeHaan, and I am your host, as well as the creator of AstroPsych 400 here on YouTube, and regular contributor to the Zodiac Killer channel. And a great way to support these shows is just by listening to some more content. But you can also go over to Amazon.com and have a look at the book Killer on a White Horse, written by me, Ned DeHaan. It is a novel, murder mystery, inspired by the Zodiac Manson connection, but it is indeed fictional. However, who doesn't love a good mystery? And there is always the TeeSpring page. Feel free to check out some of the merchandise. And remember, being weird is not a crime. Let the show begin. Okay, hello everybody. Today is Friday, another Anything Goes Friday. Welcome to the show. How's everybody doing? Just a couple of quick announcements and reminders before we begin. The first is that I invite you once again to visit the YouTube Shorts page for Black Box Online Radio, and there will be more short episodes coming out in the near future, and those are also shared on Facebook and Instagram. My personal Facebook is in the description box, and I release them as Facebook Reels, and I also release them as Reels on Instagram, BlackBoxNid88. And the second one is that a great way to support all of these efforts is to visit some of the links in the description box, including BuyMeACoffee.com. BuyMeACoffee.com allows you to make a donation or contribution to help support the show, and anybody who makes a donation will get a shout-out on Zodiac Monday. And some of the best ways to help out this channel is just by hitting the like button and subscribing, and that is something that I also always invite people to do if they are curious about true crime cases and want to follow along with these discussions. For example, today I will be revisiting the story of Missy Bevers. Missy Bevers was murdered in April of 2016, and her case has been discussed on the internet very frequently. I personally believe the reason for this is because there is a piece of information that can be analyzed by people in the general public. Even someone who isn't a close true crime follower can analyze that piece of information on their own and make their own observations and share their input and share what they think and hypothesize and theorize. And I personally believe that cases that have these types of clues, particularly clues with pieces of media, like what is a person doing in the video, what does this photo mean, or perhaps even someone's behavior, like if someone does something in a very bizarre way, like say, for example, the case of Lars Mittank, the man who just ran out of an airport without a very strong explanation, and that was also captured on video, mind you, but people can think about these things, and they can try and understand them based on their own personal experiences, and I believe that all of that is true for the story of Missy Bevers, and to help us out, I will provide the most basic online introduction. Before dawn on April 18th, 2016, there was a heavy thunderstorm in Midlothian, Texas. The night before the murder of Missy Bevers, she informed her students that the fitness class that she normally conducted would be held inside the church due to the unfavorable weather as opposed to the typical site at the church's parking lot. Yes, Missy Bevers was a fitness trainer. She ran the Gladiator Fitness Boot Camp. Bevers was last seen on unreleased surveillance footage entering the church at 4:18 a.m. while preparing for her upcoming fitness class that was set to start at 5 a.m. Shortly after 5 a.m., a student of Missy Bevers' fitness class entered the church, stumbling upon her body. Emergency services were called and the crime scene investigated. Bevers was pronounced dead shortly after the police arrived. And the reason why I'm talking to you guys about this one is because I wanted to provide an update for the year 2023 and also respond to the video that is called Final Verdict, released on Aaron Stoner's YouTube channel. Aaron is spelled A-R-I-N and Stoner, like Stoner, S-T-O-N-E-R, Aaron Stoner's YouTube channel. And it's been something that a lot of people have been heavily anticipating, because at first he said he was going to release it perhaps around the beginning of this year, but he released a video on his channel saying that he had some personal issues and he had to delay the launch, and some people were even accusing him of intentionally delaying the release of the video because they thought he was building up hype or building up press, and he just said that he had personal issues, and I tend to believe people when they say that they have a reason why they cannot put something together. And if you do want to watch this, it's available on his YouTube channel. It is about 1 hour long. I don't know why, but for some reason I was expecting that it was going to be a 2 hour user-generated documentary, but I think that the best way to describe it would be a 1 hour presentation. And if you have not watched it yet, I want you to keep listening, because I always want the episodes on Black Box Online Radio to be available to people who have watched the documentaries and presentations that I'm talking about, or even if you haven't seen them yet, I'll try and share what I think about the story of Missy Bevers, and then it can all be connected together. And then maybe if you want to watch the documentary or presentation in the future, it's almost, think of it as going hand in hand. But earlier this year, there was a live stream that was done on Tim Coville's channel called Gumshoe Stories, and he has followed the Missy Bevers case very closely. And I was not a guest on that show, but I was in the chat and we were asking questions. I was one of the people who sent in comments to that live stream, one more time on Gumshoe Stories. And one of the claims that was made by Tim Coville was that Aaron Stoner is an actor. He is someone who analyzes lots of security footage and surveillance tapes, and he runs a YouTube channel talking about lots of true crime cases, but he's an actor. He is self-taught and self-educated in everything that he is discussing on the internet. And at the very beginning of Aaron Stoner's final verdict, he made the direct statement, "I am not an actor," which I can only understand would be a direct response to Tim Coville's comments, or perhaps someone who had either reiterated that or said that previously. But Aaron wanted to be very clear that he is not an actor. He is someone who has worked in the security and surveillance industry in Las Vegas for 10 years, so he wanted to present himself as a professional when it comes to analyzing these types of stories. But Tim Coville also wants to maintain the stance that he does appreciate what Aaron Stoner does, even if he doesn't agree with all of the claims. And the first time I approached him about this was about 2 years ago, when I just said, "Hey, what is your response to these new things coming out? There's this guy analyzing the surveillance tape of where Missy Bevers was murdered, and he claims that he possibly may have been able to create a composite sketch of the murderer of Missy Bevers." And Tim Coville responded by saying that, yeah, I think that he's an honest guy. I just don't think he could have generated this specific level of detail based on the clues. And that is a big, big challenge and a big setback in the Missy Bevers mystery, because prior to Missy Bevers' murder, somebody was walking up and down the church, and they were walking through the hallways wearing this police costume covered from head to toe. The only thing that appears to be truly visible is the space around the person's eyes. And this is the clue that people can analyze and discuss. But we can definitely tell that it's either a Caucasian or someone who has a very, very light-skinned appearance. I mean, that really is all that is available there. The person has an unusual walking gait where the toes are pointed outward on one of their feet, the right foot actually, and that has led some people, including Aaron Stoner, to think that this is a person who has a prosthetic leg. And some people think, and Aaron shared all of this in Final Verdict, the other possibilities could be it is not a prosthetic leg, but it is a leg brace, which I think would be much more common, much more commonly worn than a prosthetic leg. But I mean, that's just based on probability as opposed to anything else. And the other possibility would be that someone has a deformity to their leg. Again, all of these things have been shared in Aaron Stoner's Final Verdict. I invite you guys to watch that and visit the other things on his channel. And he has also made the request, though, that if people do talk about his stuff, please share the link to the original video. And I did ask him for permission to use some of the original images that he had created. I talked about this in the past with him, and also about creating a composite sketch of the assailant, because the murder of Missy Bevers isn't only connected to this video of the person in the police costume walking up and down the church. several 100 yards away, there was a sporting goods store that had a very suspicious incident around the time that Missy was murdered. Not exactly not at the exact same time, but around the time. There's the silver Nissan Altima that pulls in and is just kind of driving in this very odd way. And Aaron was able to take some still frames from the footage from the sporting goods store parking lot, partnered with some observations from the person in the police costume, and he contacted a semi-professional sketch artist, and the composite sketch was created. But the biggest cause for concern that I had looking at a composite sketch that had come from someone that was created from a combination of the church surveillance footage and the sporting goods store surveillance footage was, do we definitively know that that is the same person? Now, a lot of people believe that it is. I even lean toward that way, that that is the car that was that belonged to the assailant who murdered Missy Bevers. But do we know that 100% that that person driving the car at that exact moment was the person that was inside of the church? I mean, it's highly possible, but highly possible isn't good enough to get a conviction. And then Aaron said that he had contacted a more professional sketch artist to go through his observations, and this is the one that I got permission from him to share in this video. And I mean, you can see some very, very striking features. I mean, he's definitely brought these images to life, but I am so glad that he shared one thing in Final Verdict, and that is that one of the images that was used to create the composite sketches only features 2/3 of the face of the person. That the final other third is part of the car. It's part of the Nissan Altima, and I am so glad he shared that, because I was one of the people that thought that that was just somebody's face, and that's what he claims was just like a blurry image that looked like a ghoul or some type of paranormal entity, and he's saying that he could extract these types of facial observations. I mean, I also really appreciate the effort that he puts into things, but I had my doubts for that because I mean, it just looks so vague and basic, and there wasn't a lot of clarity in the image. But once he showed us in Final Verdict that this is 2/3 of the person's face, and then the other part is the car, and when you focus in on the 2/3 of the person's face, it makes a lot more sense about how he was able to create these composite sketches, so I'll give him credit for that. Now, here's something else, though, that can be reiterated, shared, and discussed on the internet in regards to the murder of Missy Bevers. From the beginning, many people believed that Missy Bevers was specifically targeted. They thought that the assailant was walking up and down the hallways of the church because he was waiting to murder her. But but one point that is shared by both Aaron Stoner and Tim Koval, who don't seem to agree on too much, but they do agree on this, that a very strong motive in this case, a very strong possibility, could be that Missy Bevers was not specifically targeted, and this was a burglary that went wrong. It was a botched burglary. And some of the other points about, I mean, you can even think of some things they would have in a church. That Aaron goes into this in Final Verdict, but it's also been discussed in other places online, such as sound equipment, video equipment, possibly even money could be in the church, and that's what this person was doing, that they were walking up and down the hallways because they wanted to burglarize the church, and that they were not walking in a rushed way because they did not believe that they were going to be interrupted. They had tested the alarm system and so on, and I think I mean, that would be a simple explanation, but I was someone who got completely pulled into this targeted theory from 2017 when I started talking about Missy Bevers online. And to be very clear, I had no idea what I was doing. I had no idea what I was saying. I was just running my mouth on the internet in some type of uncalculated way. But I got pulled into that because everyone was just looking at how it seemed so odd that this person is walking up and down the hallways in this police costume, and that they did not expect that they were going to be confronted. I mean, the costume certainly existed to hide the person's identity. I think we can all agree upon that. But most burglaries are done quickly, right? You go in and out, or the person is going to be very rushed and hurried, and there was none of that. And as previously stated, Aaron talked about this in Final Verdict, that, I mean, the person's going to move based on how much time they think they have, and if they've tested the alarm system and they don't think that they're going to be interrupted, then they're going to take their time. But this person was really taking their time, and then they bring up these stories about people in Missy's life who might have had an axe to grind with her, or people who might have wanted her dead, or people who might have just had some type of personal grudge against her. And that's what happened. That's what happened with all of these discussions. People are just looking at, well, who could it be? Could it be someone in her family? Could it be someone who knew her personally? Or even what some other people had talked about how there was an opportunistic serial killer, and it was actually on Stephanie Harlow's channel when I heard this term that I use often, the frustrated serial killer, of someone who would have learned about Missy's whereabouts because of the Facebook post that she had made saying that the Gladiator boot camp would have been moved indoors. I knew that Missy was going to be in the church, and it was someone who was an opportunistic serial killer, and there was even a suspect discussed whom I don't remember off the top of my head, but she was saying that a frustrated serial killer is someone who doesn't act very frequently, only when they're in low points in their life, periods of unemployment, or maybe they just got into a breakup in a relationship, or maybe they even just dealt with some type of public humiliation, so then that's when they would target somebody. And people were looking at all of these different types of theories. And that's what we have to remember. They are theories. They are observations that people are making about true crime cases. But that doesn't mean for a second that they are actually the correct theories or the correct observations, because as I said, both Tim and Aaron were looking more at the possibility of this just being a burglary. She was not specifically targeted. The person didn't expect her to be there. They wanted to steal something of value, and when they were interrupted, some type of brief exchange happened, and Missy Bevers was shot. And I mean, I think that's the widely accepted version of the story, that she was indeed shot. There was no real mistake about that. There was some disinfo from the media saying that she died from puncture wounds from that blunt object that was being carried by the perpetrator. However, that would all of that seems to fall in line with this just being a burglary gone wrong. And I mean, it's definitely creepy though when you see the person walking up and down the halls of the church, and it made so much sense at the time that, all right, this person arrived roughly, 30 minutes before Missy, or how much of time it was, and they're just walking up and down the hallways to kill time, that they just want to pass the time until she arrives. They don't want to sit still. They're wearing the police costumes so they know that they won't be identified on any surveillance footage if it exists. But based on everything that you've heard so far, what makes more sense to you? Does this person appear to be committing a burglary, or does this person appear to be waiting for someone to target them in a premeditated murder? What do you think is the more likely outcome? And you can put your ideas in the comment section down below. And don't even think about being right or wrong at this point. Just share what you genuinely think. I would love to read your comments, and perhaps they can be worked into a future episode of Black Box Online Radio. But if you do choose to watch Final Verdict, and as I said, I'm including a link to Aaron Stoner's video per his request in the past, if you do choose to watch this, he will reveal a suspect. That's why it's called Final Verdict. He has a new suspect in this case, but I'm not going to give any comments on that. This will be one of the few times on Black Box Online Radio where I'm in the position of, I honestly don't know what to say, because it really is a needle in a haystack situation, and he's pulled something out. He has pulled one person out, and all I will say about his suspect is that he was a career criminal, a lifelong criminal, and he was arrested in 2016, but what was it, November of 2016, and Missy Bevers' murder occurred in the spring, not the fall, so he was out of jail at the time of Missy Bevers' murder. And then he was incarcerated and sent back to prison later on for a different crime. But that is all I will really share, because, as I said, it's just pulling someone out of the blue, more or less, and there are reasons why he came to choose this suspect, but if you'd like to hear more about that, I would invite you to watch his video. For the purpose of this discussion, I would just like to respond to some comments that were made in the Final Verdict documentary, which I have shared so far, about how and why people come to this conclusion so easily that it was a targeted murder, that she was murdered in a calculated way as opposed to being murdered because it was a botched burglary. Now, if I can share some things with you guys that I honestly think about the story. Number one is, I've never liked this idea that the perpetrator had a prosthetic leg. I thought that it was jumping to conclusions, that it was looking at something on the surveillance footage of the person walking up and down the church, and some people insist that they can see a reflection off of something on the person's leg, and I wasn't convinced by that at all. And we have to remember, for the longest time, there was this debate and discussion about, was Missy Bevers murdered by a man or a woman? And when I first began looking into her story in 2017, and I went down the rabbit hole, one of the only points that I actually stand by from that time is that I came to the conclusion that I was a man. Just after looking at the video over and over again and going through different YouTube commentaries, as well as doing my own here on Black Box Online Radio, I was like, I have come to the conclusion that that's a man in the costume. I think that there's some odd things about the way the person is walking, but a lot of that just goes to show that when some people are walking on film, they don't behave, or their bodies don't move exactly the way that all other men would or that all other women would. And a lot of the reasons why people thought that that was a woman in the costume was there was one still frame of the person moving, and it appeared that the figure of the person in the costume was very curvaceous, and that the person had some very wide hips, like the way that a woman would have had. But that I was like, that is just a still frame. I mean, that is just one awkward still frame from a surveillance video, and I have never truly been a big believer that there was a woman in that costume. I thought it was a man. I don't see sufficient evidence to say that this person had a prosthetic leg. I mean, it's possible, but I mean, insufficient evidence as of now. I think the biggest piece of reversal that I had was that the recent presentations that have been made online, even including Aaron's final verdict, show that the theory that this was a botched burglary seems so much more likely than being targeted. And the reasons they put forward, I think, are actually somewhat strong, convincing, and compelling. And I didn't expect that I would be coming to that conclusion 6 years ago. I thought that we would just find out, well, who wanted her dead and who set this whole thing up. It could just be a case of wrong place at the wrong time. But what do you think? I would love to know your thoughts and ideas about the murder of Missy Bevers. I would love to know what you think about any possible suspects. And if you do watch Final Verdict and you want to come back over here and share some comments about things and comparing and contrasting, but there is a link that is pinned in the comments section down below to Aaron Stoner's YouTube channel. And if anything, I give him a big credit for creating a well-done presentation. And congratulations to him for putting something out that he had clearly been wanting to do for a very long time. So I invite you guys to watch and listen to his channel, as well as to visit some other episodes on Black Box Online Radio. You can always go through some older episodes about Missy Bevers available here on this channel. I also highly recommend the Lorden Arts channel hosted by John Lorden. He did numerous episodes on Missy Bevers, and I believe he actually also interviews Tim Koval of Gumshoe Stories. Gumshoe Stories is the channel that followed the case very closely, and I said I watched Stephanie Harlow's videos on Missy Bevers. So please weigh in. What do you think about everything? And feel free to visit some other content creators. And thank you so much for listening, and that's all for me now. Anybody can write the show at blackboxonlineradio@aol.com. You can also get me on Facebook. My personal Facebook is in the description box, and there is always BlackBoxNid88 over on Instagram, and I will see you there for the bonus podcast. Until next time.